Hey, Indie Holistic Living family. So we are now starting the Indie Holistic Living podcast and YouTube. Well, we have the YouTube channel up, but now we're going to integrate the podcast YouTube, more of that style. But I love the interview style where you can actually see the person and connect with them better than just the talking head or no audio visual. I love that, where you can create and form a relationship with someone. But I have, as an herbalist, as you know, a lot of you have heard me talk about my frustrations with isolation in the plant medicine world. Because as an herbalist, we are taught to work with the entire plant and how to work with plants in a synergistic way. And so it's very frustrating when we see the overuse, I don't mean always, but the overuse of isolating what God and the earth has given us, where these plant medicines and our foods, like all of it is, so much of it is designed to work within a synergistic effect. So it's very frustrating for a lot of people, not just me, to see what has happened where we have become so disconnected in the world of functional medicine and even herbalism and holistic health altogether, where we still have the mindset of take this for that, take this to treat this symptom, right? And we need to shake things up. We need to have a better understanding of that. And so for me, I will take my frustration with something and then figure out how can we take what is so frustrating and so misleading and create a broader scope that people can understand the big picture of things, right? So today I was so excited when Paige was at this speed marketing thing, and she was like, Karen, I met this girl that you were gonna flip out about, right? And so she's sitting right next to me, and I said, can you please be my first interview for the Indie Holistic Living community? Because we desperately need her in the world of true holistic health, not this green allopathy crap, true holistic health, right? Because her background, she understands all of why we are all so frustrated in the world of isolation, but then also when isolation can be good, right? So it's really bringing more of a balance to everything. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to let Mel talk about her and what she does and her knowledge and her wisdom, right? Not just regurgitating something the AI told you, but like her actual wisdom and experience of how she's literally going to be shaking this up and bringing so much more information to people that's real, and how not to live in a separated, isolated world of plant medicine. So this is Mel. I call her Meli from Meli Methods. And now I'm going to let her tell you all about herself.
Thanks, Karen, and thank you for having me today. This really is an honor that I'm your first guest, and when I walked into your place, it was breathtaking. It's beautiful to see someone respecting the plants in that way and stewarding the medicine of the earth in that way, because truly that's where I feel the disconnect comes. My big phrase is science and stewardship. And so I find science fascinating. I geek out over it. I love it. But we've lost this stewardship that comes with this fascinating science, with what we've learned about the earth. It's how we're stewarding that information. So a lot of times with supplements, we are finding one active molecule of a plant, the most active probably, and we're extracting it, and we know it works for the general population. So then we create this supplement and we give it to everyone and assume that it should work for everyone. But realistically, you need to look at the individual body and say, do I need that molecule? Because it's no longer the plant anymore. It's not that echinacea cures colds or anything like that. It's that you're taking a molecule that reacts with your biological processes in a very specific way. Not just the human, but your body. And so one thing that I learned, so I spent 9 years at Eli Lilly and 15 years in biochemistry. So I love it. And one thing that I've learned is that our bodies are so uniquely different. It's almost impossible to really create a medicine for the general population. And when you do, and you give it to the general population, because it's an active molecule, it actually is going to cause a lot of problems for the people that it's not meant for and shouldn't be given to. And so through generations, we're now seeing metabolic issues come up in ways we haven't before. And because of that, I made a big move and decided to leave pharmaceuticals. My grandma, growing up, my father's from Honduras, and so my grandma, there's so many stories about these beautiful things she did with herbs. She was a curandero, and she had just tins of herbs all around, and people around the village would come to her, and she'd mix these herbs up. She just knew it. She knew what she was doing. The knowledge had been passed down, and then I always wondered about that. And so as I'm learning in pharmaceuticals about the different molecules and knowing where they come from and knowing how we create them, we use bacteria, actually. We just use lots of bacteria that self-replicate these medicines, and we mass produce them. Another thing we do is use petroleum-based chemicals, which sounds scary, but when you know the science behind it, it can be scary, and sometimes it's the right move. But what you do with petroleum-based chemicals is it's a lot of fossils that get pushed down underneath the earth, a lot of dead organic material. And so the final product, after it's been pushed together into this oily, goopy substance, is organic material, but it has lost a lot of the gases like oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen. And so we're left with a lot of carbon. And so a lot of building blocks of organic material. And so scientists have found out how to take those building blocks and recreate some medicinal properties. That can be really beneficial. However, in things like ibuprofen from willow bark is something we've used for a long time. It works. And so then scientists were able to recreate the biomechanism that ibuprofen does to your body. And so they found a molecule based on petroleum-based chemicals. They put it together, and they said this is invoking the same reaction on our bodies. This is ibuprofen, both being called ibuprofen. When you look at the molecules, ibuprofen from willow bark has extensively more oxygen than the other. And when you continue to do that to your body, you're introducing decayed material into your body, and you don't even know it because you Google the difference between ibuprofen and there's no difference, you know. But when you know the molecule, you know that these petroleum-based chemicals, when they're shoved into all of our bodies on a repeated basis through our lotions, through our perfumes, through our foods, through everything, anything we're able to modify, petroleum is the easiest, cheapest way to get it. And so even when it's not right, we continue to do it. And that's where we have the science, but we lack the stewardship. The stewardship is something I feel like my grandmother had. The stewardship, when I visit Honduras and I see the families and I see the pictures and I see the way she cares for the plants, it's pure stewardship. And it feels like she wasn't before the lab, but this was the original lab where she really started to dive into this. And I think we've lost that disconnect. So what I'm trying to do, and the reason I left pharmaceuticals, is to work with people and dive into the things about them, what makes up their body, what has created them, what is their ancestry, because a lot of times plants are our perfect medicine. And I know that gets thrown around a lot. And so I know a lot of people hear that and they're like, that sounds like a lot of work, I just want to take a pill, you know? And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so the misinformation mainly presides in the different parts of the plant, which is what you do and what my grandmother was doing, and what caught my attention right off the bat is that if you have a certain genetic makeup, so you have history in Sweden, then those plants in Sweden have been fine-tuned and co-evolved with your genes over time in the same way that trees produce oxygen that you breathe, and you return back carbon dioxide and they return back oxygen. We've evolved together to symbiotically live with each other on the earth. Every plant in the earth has evolved with us. It's not folklore, it's coevolution. And so if someone has those genes, you go to the plants of that region, you find the molecules in those plants, and you help that person that way. So what I do is I try to work with people to understand their own biochemistry and see if I can use the clues they know about their bodies that they've known their whole lives. Things like, I get really anxious when I see a certain, a fast car, I get anxious. So that actually has relevance to your history, to your evolution state, where you're from, blood tests, all of that stuff can be combined to narrow down one small thing that's causing a cascade of your problems, and finding that the source of that upstream, not the symptoms, but the source of that upstream specific to your body and your biochemistry is what's really going to cause a lot of problems. You can kick out so many things that you're doing to try to heal yourself, and at that point, more often than not, you're able to find that molecule in something that can be added to your grocery list. It doesn't need to be $80 pills and things like that. One example is my dad. So I was helping him. He had pretty bad high cholesterol and had the fingerprint of someone, the blood test fingerprint of someone who was eating very poorly, lots of fat, all of that stuff. And my dad is not that guy. He works out every day. He eats ridiculously healthy, and I know that. And his doctor doesn't know that, though. He tells his doctor, but his doctor doesn't get to see him on a day-to-day basis. There's no way to really know. So his doctor put him on statins, which it's no discredit to doctors. That's the information that they're given, and that's what they prescribe. But with that being said, and knowing that his diet was clear, I worked with him to see if we could narrow down which molecule was causing him problems. And one thing I noticed in his blood test was a odd platelet number. And he had the right count of platelets, but his platelets were small in size, meaning that his bone marrow was not sending out new platelets. The platelets were getting old before he was recreating new ones. With high cholesterol, you should be able to make new platelets like none other, which showed me that there was a malabsorption issue. Something was going wrong in the digestive system. So we broke it down, and I ended up finding 2 molecules that it could have possibly been. So I targeted those, and I started looking into every side effect that they can cause for his body. And I was struggling at these last 2, but I continued to investigate, and at one point I discovered one of the molecules would cause a decrease in urination. And then I thought about our road trips that we take and how we have to stop every hour for my dad. And I'm like, it's not that one. It's not that molecule. So then the other molecule, I'm looking into that, and I start to look into the treatment, because that's a big part of it. A small alteration or a small adjustment that can make a big difference in your body, and then the easiest way to get it. And so what I found was beets. And I was like, it's that one. It's for sure that one, because my dad has loved beets since he was a kid. It's a whole thing with him. He eats beets twice a week. And so I found out most of the medicine is in the roots and the leaves. So now his prescription is to eat a beet a day, leaves, root, all of it. He's ecstatic about it. My mom roasts it for him, puts salt, makes it so yummy. And he's been eating it a day, and now he tells me a beet a day keeps his doctor away. Yep. Dad jokes, and his blood tests are looking great, and he's doing awesome, and it's just a beet a day. No statins, no brain fog, no fibrosis from the medicine, no continuing issues. And it was a cascade issue from a source way up here, causing a cascade of issues in his body. And it's such a simple fix when you really steward the information that it gives you, And so with that being said, that's the kind of information I want to spread, and that's what I want to help people do, especially in my local community. Because as I was leaving pharmaceuticals, it was like you said in the beginning, it's so frustrating. It can be so frustrating to see all those issues. And I used to say, I'm going to go into pharmaceuticals and making a huge difference. That's my goal. And I realized it's a bit out of my wheelhouse. Big pharma's huge. And there's a lot of brilliant science in big pharma. There's a lot of brilliant work. But it's frustrating when you see these systemic issues with it. So as I'm leaving, I'm thinking, I don't even want to tear anything down anymore. I don't want to use that frustration there. I want to build something up so that when people know the options, they can pick the one that makes sense for them, and then that's the one that gets built up. The others will naturally fall away. And so that's where I'm putting my work now, is that education and stewarding the body, science and stewardship together, to see what we can come up with.
Oh, and it's so needed. It's so needed right now, just even in the apothecary on a weekly basis. People come in, and I'm meeting with them, and they have all these diagnoses, and we always start with, let's look at what your foundations of health are. And most of the time, they're very poor, right? And then very poor foundations of health. And people are so conditioned, they just want me to give them an herb. Give me an herb. I don't want to be the cholesterol thing, right? You know, there's so many things, right? So many different things we see here. And it's so hard to get people to, because of the environment that we live in, the culture that we live in, to get people to understand that they have, where we've become so separated from nature. And the intended, it was produced, right? This produced separation from nature. And when I'm telling them, look, we have to get your foundations of health right. Before I ever give you anything. I'm not going to give you anything. Because you don't sleep well.
The baseline.
Yes. You don't sleep well. You don't eat well. You don't make yourself a priority. And me sitting here telling you that you need to be able to create these shifts, and I'll help you, right? I'm going to educate you. I'm going to help you. And I still get the look of dread. You're not just going to give me an herbal blend that will help this. And I'm like, no, because herbs don't treat disease.
They don't really work that way.
They don't work that way. And that's where I wanted to bring this up, because with Meli, because there's a chemistry inside of plants, right? You know, there's a synergy. They are designed to work together. And the inside of you is the same way, right? You know, we have an inner ecosystem. And that inner ecosystem, like her dad, she was able to go in and see what was going on, what was wrong inside that inner ecosystem, to be able to see exactly what type of support he needed. And that's something that I see a lot. And I'll bring up the berberine. I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers here. And you know what? I don't care, because it needs to happen.
I've had 2 patients, or I've been calling them patients, because a lot of people tend to call the people they work with clients and consumers, and
I call them my friends.
I love that. My community. But I had 2 people I was working with, and both times I almost picked berberine, but because I was looking at their actual body and the things I know about them, it specifically was clear as day, not an option. And if I hadn't known that, if I hadn't been looking there, it would have been a easy pick, you know, and kind of detrimental effects if we had gone that route. So I like where you're already going. Take it away.
And let me be very clear, for every practitioner who has been trained to use berberine, it's not your fault, because you were trained on the benefits of one alkaloid, not the synergy of all of the berberis containing plants, right? So it's so interesting with that one alkaloid, right? Because that one alkaloid does show some benefits. The problem is that it also acts as a broad spectrum antibiotic on your system. So if you have somebody, it's a very strong antimicrobial. And if you ever, you know, as a clinical herbalist who works with different extraction methods, you know, if I'm ever working with the berberis plant families, all of them, I will use different isoflavones from other plant families when I'm extracting anything out of that. But it's not isolating just berberine, but it's making the berberine more available, right, to be able to pass through those efflux inhibitors. Right? So there's ways to do it where it's safe, and you're not depleting yourself even more by being told, well, now we're going to put you on nature's metformin. Right? It's just, and I watch these very well-intended practitioners do that, and I just want to scream from the rooftops going, no, there's so many better ways to use this plant. But it's just, the information isn't out there.
That's
why she's here.
Isn't out there. Exactly. It truly, I think each patient deserves an investigational process, and you know, the bodies are so different. It really doesn't take that long to break down the information. The first thing that I do is I work with your doctors. I don't replace a doctor or anything like that. I work with your doctors, the information they've given you, to steward that and read between the lines on what that means, and sit with you and get to know you and get to know your tendencies and your history. And then when you look at something like that, when I hold in my hands who your ancestors were, what plants grew in those lands, your blood test results, your inner biomechanisms, when I hold that in my hands, I do feel like I'm looking at God's handiwork. And I can't imagine doing anything but honoring it to truly understand what's going on. And the way that these medicines work is, and the way our bodies work, like you've said, is that the feedback mechanisms, they're all intertwined. So you could have a bulk list of symptoms, and you could think berberine is the perfect medicine, but it could exacerbate it if your actual problem is the feedback system telling your body that we have too much of this, shut all this down, and then you feed it more of that. You end up getting resembling symptoms, but that's why we search for the source in your body, the small adjustment that can make a big difference, because that's how our bodies work.
Yes.
And there's a lot of misinformation in a lot of fields. So there's traditional Chinese medicine, there's Western pharmacology, there's herbalism, there's folklore, there's so much. And what gets me is that they're not put together as often as I would love to see. It's all valuable information. It is so valuable, but they're not directly translatable. A lot of times with traditional Chinese medicine, they've based their science on different practices. They look at the meridians. They take, I think, 27 different pulses. It's amazing the things, and I believe it. It's accurate. But when I go to look up what traditional Chinese medicine has this molecule, they're like, we don't really do it that way.
I don't look at it that way.
Exactly. So the cool thing that I bring is that I know the different languages, and so I'm able to translate it for you. And I don't cherry pick between which one has the best route. I'm looking at your body, your chemistry, then I'm looking at all the different treatments. I'm able to translate it and steward that information back to you, and I bring you nothing but what's legitimate, what's peer reviewed. You'd be shocked at the clinical trials that are done I was just reading one the other day on Honduran herbs. And it was really cool to see that, and then think of my grandma and be like, the science is there. Mm-hmm. Like it's validating, it's backed up, and a lot of times those plants have the more ideal molecule. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that misinformation is definitely out there, and a lot of times it's dealt with good intentions, but we need to break down each individual case, and we need to look at the science, because that's God's handiwork. It's complex. And I never want to overwhelm you. Again, I want to find that small adjustment for you and make it easy on you. Mm-hmm. Big difference, small adjustment, but it is complex when it comes down to it. And not everyone has a science degree, and not everyone should need to get one to understand their health. Things should be transparent for them. And so I break down the science so that you can trust what you're putting into your body. You know where it's going to reach. You know that it's actually making it there. And you know because you feel the difference. And so I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, it's just so needed. We have too much. We have way. I was saying earlier that I love integrative therapies, integrative medicine, and that's something that I love about, the Indie Holistic Living community that we've created. Some of you will notice if you're asking, where can I find a practitioner for this, right? And a lot of times I'll hop in there and say, hey, this person in this county would be great for you, right? And the whole point of integrating is to understand that we don't all need to be the savior, because that's not logical, right? It's not logical. It's being able, this is so deep, but it's integrating what we all have access to throughout the communities that we have. We have different types of practitioners. I love integrating Chinese medicine with Ayurvedic medicine and Western herbalism and folk medicine and medical botany. Like, my formulas are so weird, and they're way out there, people will say, well, I need more of this. And I'm like, yeah, that's out of season and I've completely already changed it.
But I have this.
And I'm always switching up formulas based on what's in the season, different
Right.
extraction methods. You know, I love keystone species bacteria.
Yeah.
Working with keystone species bacteria has become one of my favorite things.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done anything with that?
With keystone bacteria? No.
Keystone species of bacteria and then fermenting those with different herbs and it's super nerdy, but the way that people will come back to us and say like, oh my gosh, eating a yogurt
Mm-hmm.
has like changed my life, right?
Right.
And it's just, there's so much intention in very different ways that I will work with these different keystone species that is so interesting. But that's, you know, I do that weird stuff, really cool weird stuff, right? But then we'll have another practitioner in Morgan County or down south or in north or west or south where we can all find out those integrative therapies where we can all work together and use each other to bring more of that integrative approach back. And that's what Meli's talking about on a deeper level, right? Where you work with nature, you work with what nature has, and then you look deeper into the human body as to what's going on inside the human body to bring that all together. It's just, it sounds deep and complicated, but it's so not. Does that make sense? Like there's so many layers.
Our ancestors were able to trial these plants and to feel their bodies and to read nature in that way, and then thousands of years later they're right. They're like, the science is there. There's a reason, because it is simple, but things have gotten so complex in our world, it's hard to pinpoint what's even simple anymore.
And just massive amounts of information.
Oh, it is the age of information. It's so much to sift through. So I understand the frustrations, and I want to hear people. I want to hear their frustrations, because a lot of times those are clues into what's really going on. So on the bacteria, though, I also geek out pretty hard on the bacteria. You know, a lot of people, they how many times have you heard probiotics? Take your probiotics. They're going to fix everything for you. And yes, your probiotics are so, it's important you have a biome. It is so important you have your specific biome. That there are so many probiotics. There's so many different species. I'm so glad you mentioned down to the species, because when I'm looking at someone's chemistry, I am breaking down what's in their gut, what species do they actually have. And they break down so many of these molecules for us when we eat, that if you're missing just one, it can contribute to high cholesterol completely. And it's because you're missing one little type of buggy in your gut. And then you could be like, okay, I'm going to down yogurt every day, and you're religious about it. And you don't even know if that strain is in there. You need to know the specific strain you're missing and make sure that you're incorporating that. When I was looking at my dad's stuff, I actually found he has low levels of a certain strain, but the molecule that was in the beets ended up fixing a lot of that downstream and got rid of the part that was killing that bacterial strain, and he was able to recover it himself. And so he didn't have to take a bunch of probiotics. It was in his gut already. We just stopped killing it accidentally.
Yeah.
And so I go down to that level, because for me, it does feel simple. It feels like with the pharmaceuticals and the supplements and everything, we've made it complicated, but it's simple. So I'm trying to find that simplicity again and share it with people. But yeah, just like you said, it's down to the species. And I wanted to touch on something else. You had mentioned finding that baseline initially. One thing I've noticed when people come to me is the frustration that they have with finding that baseline. When everything in their body is screaming at them, this doesn't work for us. We can't do this. We can't go to bed. We have anxiety. I can't eat right because I'm craving sugar. I can't, it's infuriating for them. And so they want to give up immediately. It's like, I can't. I don't know what's wrong with me. And they're right. They're right that their body's screaming at them to do the wrong things. And so one thing that also helps is when I can find that molecule and I can find that small adjustment, the cascade of events that starts to dissipate allows them to sleep better and find that nice baseline. They stop craving the sugar as much. And it's so important that I actually sit with them and believe them that, and it takes sitting with friends. It takes sitting with someone who's like, I've seen you try to get a good sleep schedule. I have seen you try. It's shocking you can't. And so one thing I tell people is, it's biohacking. It's, our grandmothers who gave ginger for nausea and things like that. That's biohacking, like all of it. So, naturally biohack yourself. Look at the sunrise and the sunset. Don't stare at midday sun, please. Yes. But when every day, catch the sunrise and the sunset. Those wavelengths that come specifically at those times, is we are co-evolved with the earth to know that it's time to go to bed and time to wake up when those wavelengths hit our retinas. And so if you can catch that, just look at the sunrise and sunset every single day, just a quick glance, take it in, and you're going to see your sleep schedule all of a sudden start to click into place, because it's biochemically telling your body, it's fine-tuning your clock again when it's been missing. So then you can cover that with a small adjustment, and then all of a sudden you have better sleep, and 10 other things start falling into place, and you crave sugar less, and all of that. So that's another world I'm looking into right now as I've left pharmaceuticals, is biohacking, which is very different from the wellness community. But again, it's like we are all wanting the same thing. We're all confused why our bodies hurt. We're all confused why things aren't happening naturally. We've all tried to cut out everything and eat well, and then something still doesn't work. It still hurts, And so if we're all trying to do that, and we all have something valid to offer, I really like to look at all the areas, because what biohackers are doing, they're gaining misinformation too. And a lot of those are initially signals that they discovered, small molecules in the body, and then they extract that molecule and they start dosing themselves with it, not knowing how much the body really should need, not knowing that when you've extracted it, those biofeedback mechanisms can happen, not knowing that it depletes your body of a certain nutrient. But all of that can be communal information for everyone to understand their body. Instead of understanding all these medicines, all these active ingredients, we need to understand our bodies and how they work. And then we can seek what does the world have to offer us that is that thing that our body needs. So that baseline is so hard to get to, but it's crucial. It's so crucial, like you said. And then we can start giving them even more herbs for anxiety, for, you've got a stressful test coming up, you need to calm down. We've got your baseline already in check. Now we can start handling those day-to-day issues on top of that. The earth is our medicine, truly.
It's reconnection. The way I look at biohacking is really just reconnecting to Earth's ways, Earth's rhythms, everything that has already been given to us that we've been disconnected from, and really logic and common sense. When you really start to learn those things, it just becomes so normal, and then you're like, oh,
it does. It starts to snowball. Yeah,
and it's beautiful to watch the way that people do shift when they step out of that feeling of overwhelm because of take this drug, this superfood, this herb, this supplement, this, everybody has dangerous parasites now, and everybody needs parasite cleanses, and all the noise that's out there. It really doesn't have to be so complicated when you can learn natural rhythms, right? And the way, like you were talking about, the way other cultures live in cultural medicine, and the way I love studying that. It's just so fascinating to me. And so last September I went to the Natural Seed Savers, I can't remember which herbal conference I was at, and it was all on traditional medicine, traditional eclectic medicine. Have you been to the Lloyd Library?
Yes.
Of course she has. I was just obsessed, right? And I came home from that weekend and I was like, Brian, this was the most beautiful weekend to learn even deeper aspects of traditional medicine. Traditional medicine is herbalism. Our first medical schools were in the 1700s and the 1800s, and those medical doctors were herbalists, right? So we didn't even have the petrochemical medicine until the early 1900s. And I think that there was both good and bad that came from that, right? You know, there were some great advancements because we didn't need to be constantly bloodletting people, right? We were doing some weird stuff.
Right, yeah.
Back then. So I feel like there were also some really good advancements that came from that. But then also that's where we did start losing that separation. That's where we started having that separation. And so when I met you, I was very excited because I feel like you are going to be one of those people that is able, you have so much knowledge to reconnect, help people reconnect. You know, when I'm helping people reconnect, I'm like, come on, we're going out into nature. I'm going to teach you how to identify plants. I'm going to teach you how to use these plants for both food and medicine, what to do with them. And that's my way of helping people reconnect, right? And I love doing that. But what you're doing, I feel like, is so, I can't wait to take her out where we can
we're going to forage together.
We're going to go do some foraging and we will totally record it.
Yeah.
And we can geek out about plants like right there with them, and you can learn how to, you know, it's just, we had a lady in this morning, right, before we even got started, who's like, I was in my gardens and I'm covered in poison ivy. I'm like, oh, do you have any oak trees in your yard? You know, oak medicine is one of the best things for poison ivy because it helps to pull that urushiol out of the skin, you know. And so, and then a lady last week was talking about conjunctivitis and some things in the eyes, and I'm like, well, do you have maple trees anywhere around? Because maple bark, you know, boiled down and then using maple bark and letting it cool to room temperature and then doing maple bark eye soaks. So when you're able to know, just know, you like just innately know how to use what grows around you, that's your reconnection. That's how you can reconnect. And there's just so much that we need to do. And I'm really proud of Indiana. Our state and our Indie Holistic Living community, they're wanting that. There's that yearning there of how do we do it? How do we reconnect? I'm so tired of always being told I have to take that statin for my high cholesterol, right? With a laundry list of side effects.
And even the doctor seeming, you know, sad about it and saying, listen, I don't like it either, but this is what we have to prescribe. This is what we have. And exactly. And that's what they're limited to, because the way our systems are in place, there's contracts with the hospitals, there's contracts with the doctors, and it's a system issue. It's no individual person's issue. It's not your doctor's issue. It's not your problem for not understanding the information. When you're handed so much information and working in the pharmaceutical field, I have no specific company to blame, no specific person to blame, but the way it's set up is to specifically be non-transparent. They want you to know only what you have to know about the medication so that you can continue taking it, and they enforce the benefits of it without explaining some of the side effects truly. You know, they stop as soon as they have to. As soon as regulation says they don't have to tell more, they don't. And so, I mean, there are teams of people meant to learn how to avoid transparency to the general public, you know. And so it's not any individual person's fault. No individual person is doing that. It's large groups where all of a sudden you lose the responsibility, you lose the stewardship, and no one's to blame anymore. And then all of a sudden people are getting this misinformation through regulatory bodies, FDA approved things, and it's the way the system works. You think you can trust that. You think that's scientifically rigorous. And when there's that kind of misinformation, you don't know where to look anymore. And so that's why I try to explain things on top of that, and I show the research that I've gotten, and a lot of times it's the local plants that are the best because we have adapted with them. And then you can also look into, even though you live in Indy, if your genetics are from Germany, that's where we're looking at plants. But the other thing on that is that Indy is amazing. I love it here, and it was you guys actually who gave me the courage to leave my wonderful job with the wonderful pension and the wonderful benefits, and it was a beautiful experience working for Eli Lilly. Absolutely beautiful. But the courage to leave and to work with my local community was because the indie people want that.
Yeah.
They're willing to learn. They want the real deal. They're willing to take the time. They love their land. It was already there for me, asking to be done. And so it really was you guys, and now I'm here doing it, and I trust my community, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. As soon as I left, I met Paige at Speed Networking. It was like a godsend.
Yes.
And within like 2 weeks of me leaving, all of a sudden I'm here, and I'm like, this is the right move. This is it. This is the move. This is what we're doing now here in Indy.
And I have been like praying to be able to find someone like her, right? To it's like we've got to be able to create. There's such a disconnect. How do we create that, right?
People need to know they can trust it. That's where it is. Everyone's telling them their product's the right product.
Yes.
How do you actually get people to trust you? It's not a stamp. It's not FDA approval. It's you taking the time to explain to them and the science behind it. I've not met one person not intelligent enough to explain when I walk them through the process. Of course, they're not going to be able to figure it out for themselves. They didn't spend 8 years getting the degrees that I got. But it's not a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of transparency. When you sit with someone to explain to them, then they trust you. Then they come back because it's actually working. You know, that's how you build trust and transparency. We're over the stamps. The stamps and the approvals, they don't mean much anymore.
No, they don't. So I have all your links that we're going to post in this, but how can people find you?
Yeah.
And tell everybody, like, who are you looking for to serve and to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left Lilly, I started my own consulting firm. It's Meli Methods. And so you can go to melimethods.com. It's MELI for Meli. You can go to melimethods.com. We'll put out my links. I have social media as well. But what I do is I do work with biotech startups who are trying to do things the right way. I work with biotech startups who want to turn their process green, who want to be more ethical and transparent. I also work with holistic brands who are trying to add the scientific rigor and validation behind their products. And then my favorite is I work with individual people to get to know them, to understand their history, to understand their biology, and work with them to find something very small, a very small adjustment that can make a big difference in your life. And finding that source to the cascade of things you might be dealing with is my absolute favorite thing to do. So you can find me at melimethods.com. You can always reach out to Karen as well. I love to work with individuals. So if you're feeling like you've ever gone to your doctor and you want to tell them that you've noticed this pattern about yourself, and it's that you're taking 1 hour stops every road trip you take, but you feel like that's kind of like silly to tell your doctor, that's what I want to know. Mm-hmm. So come to me and we'll dive in and investigate it.
I love it. I'm so excited. This is going to be amazing, and I can't wait to hear everybody's feedback and your comments. Mm-hmm. So reach out, tell us everything that you're thinking.
Yeah, on the comments, let us know the kind of things that you're dealing with that you know are something, but you don't know how to say it. I guarantee they mean so much more. They mean exactly as much as you feel like they mean. Mm-hmm. You're valid in that, I promise you.
You are, and this is the beginning of the new podcast, YouTube channel thing that we're doing with Indie Holistic Living to help you reconnect, right, to amazing people within our community who are literally helping you find that reconnection to nature to help you thrive and grow. All right, thanks guys.